welcome to another Marketing Corner Conversations. And today it's a very special day to talk about influence marketing with Jason Fall. So, for those of you who are watching us on Amazon, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and I think we are no. It's enough. Okay, it's enough. Let me stop from here. So, welcome everybody. We are talking another marketing corner conversations here on Amazon, mostly on Amazon and also on LinkedIn. This is a show I come to Amazon having conversation about marketing. Okay, that's why it's marketing corner conversations. We are talking about marketing, book authors. I will talk as well about live streaming, content marketing, live streaming, and podcast gear. And Jason, by the way, is also a podcaster. You can see in the carousel his podcast. So please go and follow him there because I truly believe that he will appreciate to have you here as a podcast subscriber. Just let me know as well where are you located, in which platform you are watching us. Okay, don't forget if you are watching me on Amazon to follow. Let me put this. Okay, so you can catch my next broadcast. I'm doing this, and in about 2 hours, I will be back with Ross Brand talking about how you can monetize live streaming. Okay, but now it's about influencer marketing. Please, if you have any question, if you have any doubt, please drop it in the comments so we can answer to you. Okay, so let's bring Jason to the screen. He's there in the basement waiting. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Marco. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with me because uh, it was I was seeing this interaction you had with amazing people, which already who were already my guests too, like Mark Schaefer, Neil Schaefer, these amazing professionals, and I said. He released a book. Okay, it's time to bring Jason to my show as well. So thank you so much for having time to join me. And I will ask you please to introduce yourself and then we can start the conversation. Is that okay?
Sure. That's great. I'm glad to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the show. I'm glad to sit in with Marco today and talk to you a little bit about influence marketing. So, Jason Falls, I am an influencer strategist or an influence strategist at Cornet, which is an advertising agency in Lexington, Kentucky. I've been in the agency or marketing services world for about 15 or so years. And then prior to that, I was a public relations person. And so that the PR background, I think really sort of explains a lot about how I think about influence marketing, because I've always been an influence marketer in everything I've done, because, public relations, the old media relations, is about, trying to influence an audience through a third party who has that audience. So a reporter or, a writer or someone like that. So I think of influence marketing much the same way. I've been working with some pretty, large brands here in the United States, and then some of them are even going globally now. I'm part of the team that helps Buffalo Trace Bourbon expand into global markets, and so I know it's starting to become more available in Europe. And so, working on a global scale and working on influence marketing on a global scale as well. So we have some activations we've done with clients that are very hyper focused on the Lexington, Kentucky market, and then we have influence marketing in different countries around the world. So I've been very, active, involved in this space for a while, very passionate about it. And when I sat down to write this book a couple of years ago, I thought, man, I'm just really going to go full in on this influence marketing thing, because I see this as being a primary marketing channel for brands for many years to come. So I've got the podcast going, I've got the book, I talk about it all the time, and I actually am a practitioner and do it every day. So it's kind of it involves a little bit of everything that I do is involved in this. So that's me.
Perfect. And the first question has to be this one because you dropped the R at the end of the influencer, because we hear every day about influencers, but you dropped the R.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
So the whole idea behind the book and kind of my sort of mantra for helping people understand influence marketing or influencer marketing, if that's how they perceive it, is I think the mainstream media and the behavior of a very small number of influencers has made us think the term influencer is a bad word. It's like, oh, an influencer, that's someone who posts pictures of peace signs and duck lips, and they're very superficial and they don't really help your business, and they're buying followers and faking their fame and all this good stuff. And so that's how the mainstream media likes to portray influencers, because they don't want to report anything good. They only want to report the negative because that's what people will pay attention to. And so I know the world of influencers to be a much different area where, if you have a really talented content creator who creates great content and they build an audience, then brands that are relevant to that influencer and that audience can partner with them and have a very, very effective and efficient marketing, communications experience. And that's what I work in every day. So dropping the R was kind of the philosophy behind that. Was that word influencer has become kind of a bad word. It's become negative. And when a small business owner who maybe hasn't done any of this yet hears the term influencer, they don't think of influencers in a positive light. So I said, well, wait a minute. Why are we focusing on the person? Why are we focusing on the noun or on the communications channel? Why aren't we focusing on what we're trying to accomplish? What's our goal? Our goal is to influence an audience to take action. And that influence can happen through an Instagrammer or a YouTuber or a live streamer, but it can also happen through the president of the local parent teacher association for your school. It can also happen through a political lobbyist with the government. It can happen in a lot of different ways. So let's stop thinking of this in a tunnel, in a very small window of it's Instagram and YouTube and Snapchat and TikTok, and say, wait a minute, we're trying to influence people. And that opens up the horizon for us to use lots of different tactics and lots of different potential influencers to be able to accomplish that. So the book really sort of frames that argument to say, let's not call it influencer marketing anymore. Let's call it influence marketing, because that's what we're trying to do. And that frees us from having to lock ourselves into social media or Instagram or YouTube, and allows us to say our goal is to influence. If we need to use a guerrilla street team marketing team to accomplish that, then that's what we're going to do. They don't have to have a big online following. And then I spell out, obviously, some case studies in the books of how that works in various businesses and various verticals.
Perfect, perfect. And you talked about something that it's important, and because usually we think, or people think, that related to an influencer, it's a huge following. Can you define what an influencer is, and what things he or she may have need to have to be named like an influencer?
Sure. My definition is very broad. An influencer is anyone who can inspire an audience to take action. I don't put a number on how big that audience is, because I've been standing in line at the grocery store behind two people having a conversation and been influenced to maybe buy or try a product, or maybe at least go home and do some research about something, because they've been talking. Have you tried this new thing? I like it. It's really good. My husband tried it and he liked it. I hear that, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I should try that product. So anyone can be an influencer. Obviously, our family and friends are the people who influence us the most. And the best influence marketing case studies, without the R, are those that tap into word of mouth marketing, so that everybody can, who experiences your product or service, can influence their family and friends to try your product or service. So my first book that I wrote several years ago, my co-author, Eric Deckers, his wife, Tony, bought a Toyota RAV4 SUV vehicle at one point in time. And she loved it so much that she convinced, I think it was her mom, her brother, and like a friend to buy one. So this one individual influenced three people to buy a vehicle that was, $15,000, $20,000 car. She didn't have any followers in social media. And if she did, it was a couple of hundred or a couple dozen. It wasn't a lot of people, but she's an influencer. So my definition is anyone who can inspire an audience to take action. And again, when you tear down the requirement that the audience has to have a big audience on social media, it frees your mind to think of different ways to get your message across. So if I'm a local business and my target audience is, parents, well, the president of the local parent teacher association at the local school might be my best influencer, and it doesn't matter how many followers they have on Instagram. So again, it's anybody who can inspire an audience to take action. And again, that opens your mind to be able to program your marketing strategies a lot differently.
Absolutely. Well, very, very good, because this is also important. But before getting to the next question, let's say hello to those who are watching us. Hello, DJ. Hello, Chris. Hello, Tony. Fabio. Hello. We have so many people from United States, from Belgium, a Spanish who's in Manchester, and a Portuguese. So we are brother. And for those of you who are watching on Amazon as well, please. Put your question. Don't forget to unmute, because otherwise you won't be able to listen to us. Okay, unmute so you can listen. And Jason, you mentioned something that I think it's very important and leads us to another important discussion when we are talking about influence marketing, which is the budget. Because okay, we relate our influence program or influence marketing to those huge influencers on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. And related to that, we think, okay, I can't afford that because it's very expensive.
Right.
Is that true?
Not always. Not always. In fact, there's lots of levels of engagement with influencers, and I think you'll find, especially with small businesses or new businesses, startups, and things, a lot of times, especially if they're a new product or service, a lot of times you can identify people out there on social media. Maybe they don't have 500,000 followers, but maybe they have 10,000, or maybe they have 5,000. And a lot of times you can just give them product and say, hey, we'd love for you to try it, and just, tell us what you think. And if you like it, we like you, we like your content, we like your audience, maybe we can figure out a way to work together. So there's lots of ways to approach it. You don't have to, walk in and say, here's, $5,000. What do I get for that? Now, you can do that with the big influencers who charge a lot of money. But I've always been a fan. Again, I'm a media relations, public relations guy by trade, right? So my whole career has been about building relationships with people who have access to those audiences. So for instance, we have a couple of clients who have some local activations in Central Kentucky where I live. And there are several influencers in different verticals in our space. Well, one of our clients, the University of Kentucky healthcare system, so it was a hospital basically, we did a program a couple of years ago where they had a new advertising campaign they were launching, and they wanted to inspire the community to tell their story of having a relationship with UK healthcare, with the hospital system. And so we came up with this, really nice brand film. It was a 2-minute sort of movie about the different areas of care that UK healthcare prioritizes. And it was, made almost like a Hollywood movie. It was very dramatic, and there was, tension and all this kind of stuff. And it was a good entertaining 2-minute watch. But who's going to get excited about watching a 2-minute movie about a hospital? Not a whole lot of people, right? So what we did is we debuted this video on Facebook, and we reached out to the influencers in the Central Kentucky area, the online influencers, and said, hey, we would love your help in, helping us sort of game the Facebook algorithm a little bit and getting more people to watch this video. So we'd like to engage you. And we had 43 people that participated, and our budget was less than $12,000. So we weren't spending a whole lot of money. But we did, pay the online influencers who earn a living by doing this kind of thing. We wanted to respect their time and their content. But we asked them to go and comment, and share their UK healthcare story on the video within the first couple of hours of the video going live. We didn't stop there, though. We also asked the same thing of what I would call people of influence, not necessarily online influencers, but again, we're taking the R off of that influencer marketing. So we reached out to the mayor's office. We reached out to the CEO of the Urban League, which is a social organization, political organization in the community. We reached out to a local dentist, a local real estate agent, the music director at a local church, people who had impact on the community, not necessarily online, but offline. And so we did the same thing. So we coordinated these two audiences and the employees at the University of Kentucky healthcare system, which there's, over 20,000 employees in the UK healthcare system, or the UK system. And we had them all go to Facebook within the first couple hours of this video going live, like, comment, share, tell their story. So we got a lot of people involved. Well, what that did is it took the video within the first 24 hours, we had 40,000 views of the video. Within the first month, we had 800,000 views of the video. And Lexington, Kentucky, the community where we are, only has about 320,000 people. So, we were almost 3 times as the population of people who watched this video, because we had a very small budget, and we just reached out and asked people for their help. So the people in the community know this hospital is a hospital that serves them. They were the non-influencers, if you will, were willing to help. The influencers were willing to help for a very low fee, because we weren't asking them to do a lot of heavy lifting, but ultimately it got a lot more exposure for that campaign. And all of the stories that we collected in the comments and whatnot, we're now repurposing those as content on UK Healthcare's website, which helps with search engine optimization and so on and so forth. So you don't have to have a big budget. And sometimes you can even reach out and say, hey, I'm new. I'd love to work with you. I don't have a budget, but I have product. Would you at least try it and tell me what you think? And maybe you can post about it if you like it. That's a great way to start.
The other thing, Jason, is about context and relevance, because we tend to, okay, we have these big influencers, so what people know them about, okay, they are, for instance, they are a celebrity, because this is, I think, one of the top levels of influencers, and he will talk about my shampoo, even though he doesn't have hair. He will talk about, but because sometimes we have this, and I think it's one of the problems in marketing field is, usually people, because of the scare of losing, they want to go broader instead of focusing and get that specific target and get that specific influencer, which has influence with the people that may become our customer, and they believe in him or she, and they may believe because they are prescribers, because somehow prescribers are the old the whole avatar of the prescriber. Don't you think this is one of the problems? Instead of, because I don't want to lose clients, and they go broader, and instead of focusing in the right person who has the authority, who has the trust, who has the knowledge to be a good influencer with their the audience.
Sure. I think, obviously the temptation for people is to want to use the big celebrity influencers because they have enormous reach. But if you really start looking into the statistics of the celebrity influencers and the people with the big followings, and you look at their engagement rate, that's when you start to scratch your head a little bit. And I'll give you a quick example. There was a young lady on TikTok not long ago who came out and complained that an agency or a brand had reached out to her and offered her, I think it was $1,000 to do a video on TikTok. And she was like, how dare they offer me a piddly sum of $1,000 when I have 800,000 followers on TikTok? But then a media professional came in and responded to that and said, well, you do have 800,000 followers, but your videos on TikTok only get an average of 50,000 views. And if you look at the cost per thousand for advertisement for the TikTok platform, it's about, $10 per thousand views. And so if you do the math, then basically the two videos that they engaged you with should cost about $500 each based on the amount of exposure that you can actually produce. So what that sort of tells us is it's not just about looking at the follower count and the reach and the number. It's about looking at the actual engagements, because as much as I know you and a lot of other people where you're from love Cristiano Ronaldo. He has 100 and some odd million followers, like right
Yes,
on all the social media channels. Not all 100 and some odd million are going to see his post about your thing if you
absolutely,
engage him.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely,
now with Cristiano Ronaldo, that's a bad example because still a lot of people are going to see it, but it's going to be a
absolutely. Yeah.
percentage of the total. So if you look at these people with 1 million followers and you realize that their engagement rate is, let's say, 1%. Well, 1% of 1 million is, what is that, 10,000? Or I don't know what I don't do math well in my head, but it's a low number. It's not a
Yes.
million, it's lower than that, right? So let's say it's 10,000. Well, what if I have someone who has 100,000 followers, but they have a 25% engagement rate? Well, now all of a sudden, I've got 25,000 people who can pay attention. I'm not using someone with a big audience. I'm using someone with a modest audience, but the engagement rate is such that more people are going to see the post. More people are actually going to get the message. So you've got to think well beyond the follower count. And when you start thinking about, hey, I can't, engage with someone with 100,000 followers, but I can engage 10 people with 10,000 followers and reach a better audience if they have better engagement rates. Now you're starting to think in terms of strategically figuring out how to leverage multiple influencers or influential people to communicate your message well.
Absolutely, it's crucial. And again, there's another thing about these big influencers, people with big following. I think it's the proper way to put things,
Sure.
because we have this trust and authority thing, which is crucial. Because if you want to people to buy your cell phone, you have to have an influencer which is known as someone who knows a lot about tech. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to give an example. When I was willing to buy my microphone, I've seen this model. It was affordable for me. The Blue was a good brand, and I went to YouTube. Let me see who's reviewing this microphone and what he or she is saying about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt in the Marquis Brownlee channel. Okay, and the guy was amazing, so young, but talking with so much authority and so much knowledge about the and I bought it.
Yeah.
So it's he's a huge he has a huge following
Sure.
on, but the question is also, and we can see this in both sides, the side of the brand and also the side of the influencer, because maybe it could be a little bit tempting to talk about something because someone is willing to pay us to talk about something which we're not known to be an authority in that.
Right.
What do you have to say about this problematic thing?
Well, you actually hit on something very important, because when you look at influencers in the broad sense, especially in the fashion and style and beauty space, what you have people who have built an audience based on some quest for fame, right? Their following is based on their popularity. About 10-15 years ago, when influencers were bloggers, that influence was based on authority. And so there's a difference between someone who is popular because they're popular and popular because they know something. And so that authority is where you're talking about, you're going to trust that recommendation to purchase a product or service. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples. I have some level of authority in the marketing space because I've been around, I've been producing content for a long time, I've written 3 books, etc. So when I talk about marketing, people will pay attention to me. I've recommended software before, I've recommended equipment. I have a podcast. I'm an old radio broadcaster. My audience knows that. When I talk about my microphone, a Blue Yeti, like you've got a Blue Snowball. I love Blue Snowballs. I have one over there. But I use Blue Yeti now. When I talk about Blue Yeti, people are going to trust me because they know I've done my homework. I've tested a bunch of mics. I love the way this thing is built and the functionality that it has. So when I talk about that, people are going to listen to it. If I have been reached out to by men's fashion brands on Instagram, in the direct messages, in the DMs, and saying, hey, we love your style. We'd like to partner with you as an influencer. And I'm not exactly sure why they're reaching out to me because A, I don't have a huge following on Instagram. That's not where I spend most of my time. But also, too, I don't have style. Like I wear solid color long sleeve t-shirts and jeans. I'm not a fashion guy. I'm never going to be a fashion guy. In fact, I'm kind of the anti-fashion guy. And so I have no authority over any audience in terms of fashion. So it makes no sense for them to reach out to me. So if you are now, they're probably reaching out to me because I'm male and I have more than 1,000 followers on Instagram, probably. But if I were a men's fashion company and I'm a big heavy gentleman, say it's probably plus size, so if I were reaching out to an influencer as that brand, I would find people who are the size person that I'm going at for in terms of that, but people who are focused on or have some degree of authority on fashion and style. Not Jason Falls, who wears, solid color t-shirts and sits behind a microphone all the time. I don't do fashion content. So you're right that we need to stop being fascinated with fame and fascinated with popularity. And we need to start focusing for products and services and actually, selling and doing well with our influence marketing in terms of business. We need to focus on the influencers who have authority over the audience we're trying to reach within the product category of what we're trying to sell. Now, those lines can blur sometimes, of course. It doesn't have to be a dead on. I don't really do a whole lot of technology hardware stuff, but I'm a good influencer for microphones because of my podcast and my radio background, things that I've done. But if somebody was selling computers, I wouldn't necessarily be an authority on that. I don't know enough about computers to tell you any better than the next person which is the best to buy. I can tell you what I use and why, but that's no better than any random person telling you that too. I don't have an expertise there. So what we've got to do as our brands to be more effective with influencer marketing is really align with the people that have authority in what we do and what we say. And if we partner with them, especially if we partner with them over the long term, we're going to have a lot better results from our influence marketing programs.
Absolutely. And this is a very good point. And this will lead us to our next, my next question, because it's, for me, it's crucial. It's the content. Okay. Because some people want to become, as you said, an influencer because they are famous. Most of them fake a kind of perfect life they don't actually have. But this is another story. Yeah. I think this influencer career, if we can say it this way, should be based in this idea. Mm-hmm. Can I keep at least with this format, with this type of content in 20 years? And if the answer is yes, maybe you're in the right way. Okay, of course you may change, but if you don't see with 20 more years making the same thing, maybe you're not doing the right thing.
Right.
And the other thing is, it's the kind of content, how to structure your content, because it's something important as well to the brands to understand if the tone of your content matches with their culture, their mm-hmm. brand, and everything. What do you have key things about content to become effective in this influence?
Sure. So when I'm looking at influencers to use with my clients, the content is the most important thing. And there's lots of questions that you have about which influencers should I use. Do I look for the ones with the most followers? Do I look for the ones with the most engagement? How many do I use? All that kind of stuff. I really focus on the content first, because if the content that the influencer is putting out there does not align with your brand, if they don't look and feel like someone who would talk about your product, there's going to be a disconnect and you're not going to convert very well with their audience. There needs to be a really good audience overlap. So if you've got a Venn diagram, right, and you've got your audience and their audience, it needs to be this, there needs to be some overlap there. And they need to, as close as possible, look and feel like someone who would be on your feed and it would make sense, right? So if I am, let's say I am a designer fashion brand for men, and I do suits and ties and pocket squares and cufflinks and polished shoes, and I'm all about exquisite fashion. I'm not going to partner with someone who wears backwards ball caps and ripped jeans and t-shirts and whatnot. That doesn't look and feel like me. That's not going to, my content is not going to appeal to their audience any more than my audience would like that particular influencer, right? So I get into the content. And when I get into the content, I'm looking for that brand alignment. Do they look and feel like my brand? But I'm also looking for how do they and how often do they really engage and communicate with their audience. So I don't just look at the post, I look at the conversation around the post. Because if the influencer just posts their thing and then disappears into the night, and then there's a bunch of comments saying, I love this, that's great, there's a higher chance that the engagement rate is not genuine, that it's probably going to be fueled by bots and other things that just comment to throw an emoji up there and drive commenting.
Nice photo.
Yeah. So, some influencers will actually falsify that. They will pay for bots to create engagement on their posts. But I also look to see, are the same people commenting over and over again, because that can signify that there might be a comment pod of people who agree to go comment on everybody else's posts, which is, again, falsifying the engagement. But if I see that people are getting in there and they're asking questions or they're reacting, and the influencer is having a conversation with them back and forth, now all of a sudden I know that that's more genuine engagement, that audience is really into what this influencer is doing and into their content. So the content needs to be good. It needs to be aligned with my brand. The conversation needs to be good. It needs to be aligned with, can this person communicate a message to an audience and be effective in persuading them to try or buy my product or think differently about the thing I want them to think differently about. But it really is all about the content and the engagement that comes out from the content. If you really analyze those two things, you're going to do a much better job of choosing the right influencers without having to worry about how many followers they have, or without having to worry about even their engagement rate, because you're going to know it. You're going to get in there and just get a sense, this is someone who will have genuine conversations about the products they love with their audience. Their audience will respond. And those are the influencers that I tend to prioritize, are the ones that have the really good content that's aligned with what I'm trying to do. They look and feel a lot like me, and then they have that true engagement with their audience.
Absolutely. And we have this comment from Chris. I have bought my new Blue Yeti because of the recommendation of an online trainer who used it for years, so I could hear the quality of her Blue Yeti too.
Yeah,
This is
I love Blue Yetis, and there's two reasons that I love the Blue Yeti. And remember, my first job when I was 14 years old was I was a disc jockey at a radio station. So I've been in radio for a long time. There's two things that the Blue Yeti does for me that like a Blue Snowball wouldn't necessarily do. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the Blue Snowball, because it's a great microphone too.
Yeah.
But I can I'll do this so you can see it. I can plug my earbuds into the Yeti so I can hear myself. And you can't normally do that with computer setups. When you're in a broadcast studio with, the big boards and things like that, if you're a singer or you're a disc jockey, announcer, voiceover artist, one of the most important things you need to do is to be able to hear yourself, so that you can, tell your tone and are you clear? Do you have anything gargling in your throat? That kind of thing. So I can hear myself, and I've got a volume control on the front where I can turn myself up and down and control the volume there. But these two buttons on the back are also important too, because I can control the gain of my microphone by turning myself up or down here. Right. And so I can control that without having to go find the volume controls on my computer. And this other button has different sound pickup patterns, right? So I can set it. I'll change it really quickly for you here. Let's see, go one this way. So this is me talking, and it's got a little, like a little bubble pattern here to just get my voice and not a lot of background noise. But if I switch this, now I sound different because it's picking up the room, right? It's picking up the air conditioner running. I sound a little bit more echoey, etc. But if I go back, I sound a lot better because it's really just focused on the noise right around the microphone. It's got a couple other patterns too, so you can put it in the middle of a table and have someone sit across from you. So it's a great mic.
Well, I'm gonna add it to the to the carousel. It was not. Let
Yeah,
me
please do add it to the carousel. People should go buy this thing.
let me see. The other question, Jason, and I think it's very important, and sometimes people don't take care of it as good as they should. Is okay. We found the right influencer. We have the idea. We know that this is the perfect fit, but maybe they don't have the right strategy. They don't define goals. They don't see okay,
Mhm.
which next step, what should it be? Because sometimes it's not clear,
Right.
this next step, right?
Sure. So, the important part, I mean, obviously, if you're going to spend money on influencers, you're going to have to, spend money with ones who understand that you're in this for business. You're not in this to play around. You're not just looking for people to talk nice about you online. You're trying to convert people to customers and whatnot. So, what you've got to do is when you reach out and engage with an influencer, you've got to say, look, it's very important to us to be able to measure what we're getting out of this. So, we want to make sure that there are clear goals. Our goal in working with you is to, let's say, add more followers or drive more traffic to our website or whatever the goal might be. Well, you've got to work with them so that they will give you the kind of analytics and metrics that will allow you to judge whether or not they did a good job of it. And if you have that conversation up front, then they will realize, oh, if I want to keep working with this brand, I need to A, deliver the analytics, but B, I need to perform. I need to make sure the analytics are good, right? So if you ever approach an influencer and their first question is, what's your budget? That's a red flag for me because it tells me that they're just interested in what's in it for them and how much they're going to get paid. If their first question is, what are you trying to achieve here? What are your business goals? Now I know I've got someone who's thinking about it from a business perspective. And I know I've got someone who's going to make sure that they share their analytics with me and they're going to prioritize whatever they need to do to drive those analytics. And so an influencer who says, what are your business goals? Now all of a sudden I know this person is thinking, how can I help this company, this agency, this brand move the needle forward? And they also realize that if they do that, I'm going to be more willing to come back to them and pay them beyond this one engagement. So that's a little bit of a red flag for me. If someone says, what's your budget first? I'm like, I don't want someone who's interested in my budget. I want someone who's interested in my goals because I know they're going to deliver for me.
So, and there's something you, and I'm gonna tell because now that I became an Amazon influencer, for one of the things I came first to my mind was I won't be talk about everything because I built my authority about talking about marketing because I made lots of live shows, so I want to stay there. Okay. And for one of the first brands who approached me, one of the things that I had in mind, I want to keep this relationship because I think it's also important because if you are talking today about a brand and the very next day you are talking about another one and the very next day you are talking about us, because I understand, for instance, that you can talk a company which is related to microphones to mobile, and then
Mhm.
you can the next day you can talk about microphones for a low budget.
Mhm.
You can talk, for instance, the other day, more expensive microphones. This for me makes sense, okay, because you're in the same thing. They are not competitors, okay, and you are thinking about as well your audience, because I have different range of budgets on my audience. This, but if you are talking today with direct competitors,
Mhm.
changing every day, and you are talking and you just do a show about this brand and you don't talk about that anymore, and I think this is not good as well. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, what you're really touching on there is saturation rate, and so when you're looking at influencers that you may want to engage with, it's very important to understand how they work with brands. So when you're reviewing their content, you want to see when they do sponsored content, they do a good job of communicating the message, of engaging the audience, etc. But you also want to be careful to see, well, how often do they do it? Because if their feed is full of nothing but sponsored posts, well, it doesn't matter who the sponsored posts are for. if, more than, 25 or 30% of their content is sponsored posts, then you're going to start to see their engagement rate will drop off. It'll be, a lot lower than other influencers. Their audience isn't as interested in their posts anymore because their audience doesn't want to be sold to. That's not why we follow people on social media channels. We don't want to, see a never ending stream of ads. In many ways, social media emerged because we didn't want to see ads anymore. So you have to look at the percentage of their posts that are just them posting and doing what they do with their audience versus the ones that are sponsored. And so if you have a high saturation rate, you need to double check and make sure, is their engagement rate still high? Does their audience respond well to these sponsored posts? Because some audiences will. I mean, there's an audience of people out there in certain verticals who follow people because they want product recommendations, and that's the only reason they follow them. And so some of those influencers will work just fine. I actually had an instance when I was writing the book. I talked to Jim Tobin, who is the CEO of a firm called Carousel in the United States, which does influencer marketing. And he told me of a story where he had an influencer that several of his clients had worked with over several years, who was very good and very productive for them. But at one point, she got so big that she was posting sponsored content, every day, every other day, much more frequently. And as a result, her engagement rate dropped. Her audience kind of, dropped off and wasn't as interested in her content anymore. And so they stopped using her. And Jim said she actually called one day and said, "Hey, why aren't we doing more engagements? We've had to work together for a long time. Why all of a sudden, or am I not getting any deals with you guys?" And Jim just told her, he said, your saturation rate's too high. Our clients, need to, have more genuine communications and relationships, more authenticity from the influencers that they use. And your feed has become rather inauthentic because you're just throwing products at people all the time. And the young lady said, "Well, I'm getting the deals and I'm getting paid every day, so I can't really say no to it." And he said, "And good for you. If that's the way you want to, build your audience and do your thing, that's fine. But for our clients, we want, more authentic and more genuine conversations. We love that engagement rate metric versus the number of followers. So we're just not going to use you as much anymore." So be wary of that as well. Look at that saturation rate. Are they constantly hawking products? Because if they are, there's a good chance their audience isn't as interested as they maybe once were.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you have your podcast, okay? And I think someone who's in a consistent way sharing content, they will sooner or later they will become an influencer. I think
I think you're right. I mean, when I go back and look at how I became influential in the marketing space, if I am, it was back in the days when Twitter was new and when Twitter was a platform where people, shared content. That was back when we had social bookmarking sites like Delicious, and that was where Reddit and Dig and a lot of those platforms came in. People were building their audience, building their influence online by curating content. And so what I did is I would wake up every morning and for about 30 minutes, I would go through a feed reader, to use an old term for people. And I would look at all of the content from the leading PR blogs, marketing blogs, advertising websites, and I would just share 5 or 6 pieces of content throughout the day on Twitter, to establish some level of reason for people to follow me. If you follow me, you're going to get really good stuff in these content categories. And so over the course of a few years, I went from a few hundred people following me on Twitter to a few thousand to tens of thousands. At one point, I think I had over 100,000 followers on Twitter. I think I'm at like 98 or something now. But I gained that following in that network because I just shared good content. It wasn't necessarily because I was, brilliant or creating great content. I was just sharing good content. Now, I had a blog and I also shared my own content. So I built that thought leadership, platform a little bit in there too. But I think there's a lot of validity to the point that sometimes you just have to be a good curator. You don't necessarily have to be a good creator. And you're starting to see platforms emerge again that are going back to, that way of thinking. There's a new one that I've been testing called Bookshelf. I'm going to try to copy the link here and paste it over in the chat so people can see it. But bookshelf is kind of what I think of as, can I chat? I don't know if I can chat. Can I chat? I don't think I
You
can
can
chat.
send it through the private chat,
I'll
please,
send it to the private chat and then you can share
and
it. So
and
this
I
is,
will share it.
there you go. This is a link to a platform called Bookshelf. And Bookshelf is relatively new, but what they are doing is they're creating an atmosphere much like Reddit or Delicious or some of those old bookmarking sites where people can just share links to good content. And you can put links in different bookshelves of categories. So I've got a bookshelf for influencer marketing, but then I've got a bookshelf for stuff that I've written. So if anybody's interested in my writing, it's in an organized place. And they just announced yesterday they're going to put basically a tip jar, a way for people who are good curators to be able to be tipped by the audience. So if you like someone's bookshelf, you can say, I'd like to, tip you $5 or whatever, to be able to thank you for doing that curation. So they're creating a new way for people to become influential without having to create their own content and even monetize it. So these platforms are starting to emerge. So you never know what could happen.
Something and this is very important for me, which is content curation, because most of the people say, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't have content enough to start my content journey. And curation is a good way because, okay, you're just choosing, kind of, but you have to be responsible of that. You have to be very you have to be a very good criteria to choose the content. You will learn from that content a lot, and this is very important, and people will start giving you that authority, because choosing a good content, it's also a matter of knowledge, right?
Yep, absolutely. And if you go back and look, remember, this is how in a lot of ways, the world of influencer marketing became about, because back in 2005, 2006, the people that were influential voices online were, again, people who were sharing good content or curating good content. So if you look at someone like Pete Cashmore, who started Mashable, he had Mashable. But kind of the vibe back then was not just Pete's going to write a bunch of stuff on his website and that's all he's going to share. The vibe was Pete would come on to Twitter and share content from the Onion or the New York Times or the Atlantic or, TechCrunch or some other, sites to say, hey, this is what I'm reading and this is how I'm, making myself smarter. And he gained a following of people based on the fact that he was sharing other people's content. In the middle of all that, he was also sharing his own, and he helped, he built Mashable up into a huge media company, which is now, a bigger than life kind of place. And everybody wants to be mentioned on Mashable because it's a great website. But that's how Neil Patel, that's how a lot of this sort of online digital marketing brains out there established their credibility, was just finding and curating content.
Absolutely. And now I need to talk about your podcast. It's highlighted, so those of you who are watching us on Amazon, please follow the the podcast of Jason. Jason, how can you build your influence through a podcast? Because audio is it's becoming a big thing in the content marketing world. Okay, and also how you can, if okay, we need to talk about this, how you can monetize with podcasting.
Okay. So let's break it up into the two things. So how can
Yes.
you build your influence with a podcast? Well, a podcast does a couple of things that other mediums don't do. If you are, and I'll use an example. There's a gentleman by the name of Todd Henry, who 15 years ago or so started a podcast called The Accidental Creative. And so he would come on and share an idea, 5 or 6 minutes, just talking into a microphone. Hey, I had writer's block yesterday, and here's how I got out of it. Right. And so he wasn't necessarily a creative, advertising creative person, but he was talking to the audience of people out there who have to be creative in their work, but aren't necessarily, someone who went to art school or were a copywriter by trade. And so he would share tips and tricks on how to think differently about creating content and how to get yourself out of writer's block and things like that. And he just talked into a microphone. and he started this podcast. And of course, he promoted it and shared the content and whatnot. But now, fast forward, 15 years, 13 years, however long he's been doing it, his Accidental Creative podcast has something like 40 or 50,000 listeners to every episode. He's got an audience of people that, and I'm one of them. I listen to every episode of the Accidental Creative because I love the things he talks about, the ideas he shares. He interviews people on his podcast now, so he expanded to interviews at one point. And so I get really good ideas on how to keep my creative brain going from that particular podcast. Well, he also has sponsors in that podcast, right? So he established authority for himself and became a resource for people who were looking for that type of information or inspiration. And so he built his, authority, his influence. As his audience got big enough, he incorporated sponsors who would come in and say, hey, we want to buy an ad on your podcast. He also has the ability, I don't know that he does this or not, but you also have the ability to go beyond just the ad where you're throwing in this podcast is brought to you by, Marco Novo, who's the most brilliant Portuguese person on the planet, right? So that's an advertisement. But he also has the ability to say, potentially monetize his podcast in other ways. He can also say, you know what, we're going to take a 10-minute interview, and that's going to be the podcast, but we're going to do like an hour interview that if you want access to the whole thing, you have to pay to subscribe to a next level, and then you'll be delivered that audio. He also has the ability with companies and sponsors to create audio content for them. So he could do a little podcast series for a big company, right, that helps them walk into the podcast world. He could also do more what we would call native advertising or sponsored content. So instead of an advertising read, he could actually have people, pay a premium to either be a guest on his show or create some sort of, activity or something for his audience that is relevant to the product, but also really super relevant to the audience that he doesn't seem, sort of spammy giving them. I don't know that he does that. Of course, I'm just, sort of hypothetical situations here, but there's lots of different ways he could monetize that. I know, Todd Henry speaks. He's written several books. He consults with companies and clients. He does a lot of different things, but I know that based on the audience numbers that I've seen from his podcast in the tools that I use to find those things, he could monetize and just do the podcast all the time if he wanted to. And probably have live a fairly comfortable life doing that. So podcasting, I think the reason that it's so powerful is because just like Clubhouse and social audio platforms have emerged in the last year with the, lockdown and isolation and whatnot, people connect more to other people's voices than they do in other avenues. I mean, no offense to this show, but the good majority of the people who are watching this show are actually just listening to it. They've got it turned on. It's happening in the background and they're doing other things. It's the audio that keeps them connected. It's the voices. The video adds an element to it. And if you want to watch and see someone's facial expressions and gestures, that's great. But Clubhouse has taken off because the real human connection is that audio experience, that voice experience. And so I can, on demand, get in my car, drive an hour down the road to see my girlfriend, and I can put on the Accidental Creative, and I feel like Todd Henry and I are buddies. We've actually spoken, live one time. I've never met him in person, but I feel like I know the guy because I listen to his podcast all the time.
Absolutely. And for instance, when I now I don't do that, but before the COVID thing, I was playing soccer in the old guys team, and from times to times we had to go make long travels, okay, to go to the games, and we went by bus, and that's what I did. I plugged my earphones in my cell phone, let me pick a podcast, and there you go.
Yeah.
And it's a very good way to
and the reason that I started Winfluence, the influence marketing podcast, was because I'm living and breathing this influencer marketing stuff every day. And I, like to think I have a level of expertise, but I don't do the podcast because I feel like I know everything. I interview other people and I'm learning constantly from the people that I'm interviewing. And so I think it would be selfish of me to talk to those people and not share it. So I just record the interviews. I call and talk to people that I'm really interested in learning from, finding a new perspective, thinking about things a little bit differently so that I can do a better job for my clients. And I know when I record those conversations and put them out there, the people who listen to the podcast are going to be like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm going to try that with my clients, right? Or for my business. And so I put it out there because I know that the conversations teach me something. And I hope that they will also teach the audience something. So if you're interested at all in influencer marketing, Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast, I think is a great resource. There's lots of other resources out there. I even have a blog post on my website that's here's the best influencer marketing podcasts. There's a handful of them out there that are really good, but I would offer mine up as an option for you if you're interested in it.
Perfect. And Chris, she's saying, I listen to podcasts and audiobooks from interesting podcasters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, well, Chris, Winfluence, Reframing Influencer Marketing to Ignite Your Brand is available on Audible, and I narrated it. So there you go.
Perfect. Perfect. And I had to talk. You were talking about podcasting, and even though it's kind of a new thing, it's an old thing, right?
Yes.
And and this will turn the conversation to something that I think it's also important. And I've heard Seth Godin a few weeks ago making the keynote in the StreamYard event summit, and he mentioned something that for me it's really important, which is I started blogging long time ago, and I keep blogging. I think he writes at least he releases a blog post every day.
Mm-hmm.
How you relate this fever, if I can, about the new shiny object and
Right.
against this consistent approach, if you want to first become an influencer,
Mm-hmm.
or if you want you are a brand searching for influencers for your business.
Gotcha. That's a great question. So, I mentioned Clubhouse, and right now Clubhouse is all the rage in the marketing world. And I've been to Clubhouse and I've hosted a room or two and I've participated in several others and I enjoy it and it's fascinating and it's fun. But I am not going to take my attentions off of the things that I'm building for my brand for influence marketing, which are my blog at jasonfalls.com, my podcast, the Winfluence Influence Marketing Podcast, promoting my book, of course, because those are properties that I own and that will always be with me. Clubhouse may disappear tomorrow. There's a lot of people who started this social media marketing thing on MySpace. Well, if you put all your eggs in the basket on MySpace, you just lost all your eggs because there's really nothing there anymore, right?
Absolutely.
If you're constantly putting your attentions on other people's property, including social media networks and including the big ones like Facebook and Instagram, if that's the only place you're investing your time and energy to build a platform to connect with your audience, then eventually you're going to, basically be victim to whatever that platform decides to do. If someone, walked in and acquired TikTok tomorrow and decided to charge users $1,000 a day to use it, well, all these people who have built TikTok audiences are going to be out of luck because they're probably not going to want to do that and not be able to afford it. Not that that's probably going to happen. So there's obviously some reasonable, strategies and logical reasons to invest your time in promoting what you're doing on social networks. But I have been blogging in one form or fashion for the better part of 20 years. I started out as a newspaper columnist and I was publishing it on AOL member pages back in the day because I wanted people not in my hometown where I was writing it to be able to read it. And so I've been writing online for a long time. And I learned over the years that no matter how frequently I write or infrequently I write or what I write about, I do have a core audience of people who will always come and read my stuff. And that's my tribe, right? That's my core tribe of people. I want that core tribe of people to be a lot bigger. And I'm putting, sort of all my attention into this influencer marketing thing right now because I think it's going to continue to grow. But if Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, if they all go away in the next 10 years, I still have my website. I still have my podcast. I still have my blog. I still have my book. I'm still going to have a channel to communicate with the world. I'm going to use those other platforms to promote what I do. I'm going to engage there because I want that social interaction with people. But you've got to build something and consistently feed that engine so that you always have a place to come back to that is yours.
Absolutely. And this is very important. And let me bring something to the carousel. Let's highlight. It was a book I found. It's for South European people. He has a bull in the cover.
Yes.
And this brings something that for me is very important, Jason, which is building evergreen content. Okay. Mm-hmm. For me, I love the evergreen content because it saves you lots of time because you don't have to keep coming with the new content because let me see what I write 2 years ago. Oh, it's still fresh. Come back. And also, as an authority, it's good when you predict something that actually happened or something. And again, I think sometimes people think social media is mostly about tools. And I think social media is 95% about strategy and no bullshit. Can you share some insights about this book? Because I truly believe that today it's a good book.
Well, thank you for saying that. I Eric Deckers and I wrote that book I think it was published in 2011, so it's 10 years old. But we wrote it then as a way to say, here's how to think of social media strategically. And we weren't writing about Facebook or MySpace or YouTube or Twitter. We were writing about any social media platform that comes along. Here's how you need to think about it for your business. And so it continues to sell modestly well month to month, 10 years later, because it's a social media strategy book. It's not a social media tactics book. So in fact, when we wrote that book, Instagram had just been born and really wasn't a big deal. Snapchat didn't exist. TikTok didn't exist. But you can go through no bullshit social media and understand how to look at Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, any other platform, and understand how to decide whether or not it's going to be right for your business. And if it is, how to then develop strategies to engage audiences on those platforms. So it really is you said the word evergreen. It is an evergreen book in a lot of ways because we didn't focus on the tactics. We focused on thinking strategically about social media. The book walks you through how to understand what social media can do for your business, how to decide what of those things you want it to do for your business, and then how to build strategies to accomplish those things for your business. And that's really what the book is about. It's a strategic planning book, not necessarily a how to use social media book.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Jason, we are about to finish our live. Time flies. But before that, I want you to give 3 reasons for people to buy your book.
Okay, so I'll go back to talking about Winfluence instead of no bullshit social media. So 3 reasons you should buy this book. First of all, I think that especially if you haven't yet done a lot with influencer marketing, this will help you understand why influence marketing is powerful, why we need to take the R off the end of that word and think about it, in a much more broad perspective. And so it'll help you think about influence marketing more strategically for your business. Reason number 2 is that it will help you see all of the different sort of strategic business, executions that you can use influence marketing for. Just like no bullshit social media, it gives you a little bit of a blueprint to say, here's what influence marketing can accomplish. Now, what do you want it to accomplish for your business? And then let's figure out how to execute that. And the third reason is it's chock full of case studies of both online influencers and offline influencers accomplishing things for brands that will inspire you to think differently about how to use influence for your business. And the fourth reason is because you'll be my very favorite person in the whole world if you do buy the book.
Perfect, perfect. And now, besides the Winfluence podcast, where do people can find you?
JasonFalls.com is the place to go to get to anything and everything me, but I'm pretty much Jason Falls everywhere. So I'm at Jason Falls on all the social networks, and I would love to connect. So let's do it.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jason. We had this amazing, it was an amazing conversation. Uh, it's very good to understand the power of the influence marketing and how it can help you. And I think you made things really clear. The book, it's really good. People are saying amazing things about the book. So, and I was watching the reviews on Amazon, and I saw Mark W. Schaefer reviewing your book, and this is really important when someone with that weight in the the marketing field reviews a book, because, and this is authority, credibility. It's also really important when you are talking about influence. So take a look at the book, because it will worth for sure the your time and your money. It's an investment. We should think about it. Thank you so much, Jason. Let me know when you release the next book, because I'll be pleased to have you again.
I will do that for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. And we will, okay, in 1 hour and 1 minute or 2 minutes, I will be back here in Amazon. So stay tuned, because I will be back. See you soon. Bye bye. Thank you
Thanks,
so much
Marco.
for tuning in. Bye bye.